When my dad snatched Grandma's worn leather savings book out of my hands at her graveside and threw it into the open pit, screaming that it was useless trash and needed to stay buried, everyone at the funeral thought he was just blinded by grief. But the panic in his eyes told a completely different story. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. After the mourners cleared out, I reached into the dirt, retrieved the passbook, and drove straight to the central bank downtown. When the head clerk opened the ledger and typed the account number into her computer, the color drained from her face. She slammed her hand on the security button under her desk and looked at me with wide eyes, whispering, "Call the police.
Now.
And do not leave this room." My name is Blake, and at 31 years old, I thought I had seen every side of my father, Arthur. We had a distant, strained relationship for as long as I could remember, mostly because he viewed people not as family, but as financial assets to be managed or discarded. The only true warmth in my life had come from my grandmother, Evelyn. She was my anchor, the one person who loved me without conditions. But sitting at her graveside, watching the dirt cover her casket, the fragile piece of the family completely shattered. Right before the service ended, my father stepped toward me. He aggressively snatched the worn leather-bound passbook out of my hands, the very passbook Evelyn had frantically pressed into my palm in her final days, begging me to keep it safe. "This is useless trash," Arthur screamed, his voice echoing across the silent cemetery. Before anyone could react, he hurled the book into the open muddy pit, right onto the coffin lid. "The savings book must stay buried," the mourners gasped, assuming he was simply overcome with grief. But as I stared into his eyes, I didn't see sorrow. I saw raw, desperate terror. I waited until the crowd dispersed and my parents drove away. Standing alone in the cold drizzle, I climbed slightly down the embankment, reached into the mud, and pulled the passbook back out. As I wiped away the dirt, I noticed a tiny, yellowed note tucked secretly into the back sleeve.
I didn't open it yet.
My hands trembling, I got into my car and drove straight downtown to the central bank, determined to uncover what my father was so desperate to hide. The rain was pouring heavily by the time I pulled up to the central bank downtown. My hands were still caked with cemetery mud, but I didn't care. I marched straight through the glass doors, holding the damp, leather passbook like a lifeline. The grand marble lobby felt cold and intimidating, but the burning curiosity inside me completely drowned out my hesitation. I approached the high-teller desk and asked to speak directly with the branch manager, insisting it was an urgent matter regarding my late grandmother's account. A woman named Patricia led me into a private office. She took the worn ledger from my hands with gentle care, using a soft cloth to wipe away the dirt I had just pulled from the grave. "Let's see what we have here, Blake," she said softly, opening the first page. But as she typed the handwritten account number into her computer, the quiet professionalism in the room instantly evaporated. Patricia's fingers froze over the keyboard. Her breathing hitched, and I watched in real time as every bit of color drained from her face. The screen flashed a bright red alert banner. Instead of a modest, untouched savings balance built over decades, the digital system flagged a series of massive, unauthorized wire transfers made years ago, all executed using a forged power of attorney. Without saying a single word to me, Patricia's hand darted underneath her desk, slamming down hard on a hidden security button. She leaned across the desk, her eyes wide with unadulterated panic, and whispered, "Call the police.
Now.
And do not leave this room." My father hadn't thrown that book into the dirt because it was useless. He wanted it buried forever because it was the one piece of evidence proving he had stolen my grandmother's life savings. As two armed security guards stepped outside the office door to lock down the hallway, Patricia began printing out decades of buried financial transactions. The reality of what my father had done was far worse than anything I could have imagined. For the past 5 years, as my grandmother Evelyn's health slowly deteriorated, Arthur had systematically isolated her from the rest of the family. He convinced everyone that he was acting as her loving, devoted caretaker, restricting my visits under the relentless excuse that she was too tired or too confused to see anyone. But behind those closed doors, he was executing a cold, calculated betrayal. The bank records laid out a brutal paper trail. Over $350,000, funds explicitly designated in Evelyn's original paperwork to form an untouchable trust fund for my future, had been siphoned off. Arthur had used a falsified power of attorney to transfer the money into various shell accounts, funneling her life savings directly into paying off his failed real estate ventures, illegal gambling debts, and lavish personal expenses. Sitting in that locked office, waiting for the police officers to arrive, I remembered the tiny, yellowed note tucked inside the back sleeve of the passbook. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. It was written in Grandma Evelyn's distinct, elegant cursive. "Blake, my sweet child," it read. "If you are reading this, Arthur thinks he has erased me. He believes I am too weak to notice what he takes from my accounts. But I see everything. I have recorded every single dollar he stole in this passbook. Take this to the authorities. Do not let him destroy your future the way he tried to destroy mine." Evelyn hadn't been confused at all. She had been playing the long game, gathering evidence right under my father's nose. With the certified bank printouts and Grandma Evelyn's handwritten ledger safely secured in my bag, I accompanied Detective Miller and 2 uniformed police officers straight to my parents' house. My heart pounded against my ribs, but the paralyzing fear I had felt for years was completely gone, replaced by a cold, unwavering determination. When we arrived, Arthur's polished Mercedes was sitting in the driveway. We walked up the front steps, and through the sheer curtain of the living room window, I could see my parents sitting at the dining table. They weren't grieving. They were casually drinking wine, laughing, and sorting through a pile of Evelyn's remaining estate deeds, already planning how to liquidate her physical assets. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, the officers standing quietly right behind me in the entryway. Arthur looked up, a condescending smirk spreading across his face as he set down his glass. "Blake," he sneered, his tone dripping with patronizing arrogance. "I see you've finally decided to come home. I hope you're ready to apologize for making such an embarrassing, dramatic scene at your grandmother's funeral today." He genuinely thought he had won. He assumed I was breaking down, coming to beg for his forgiveness. Without saying a single word, I walked over to the dining table and slammed the bank's certified audit trail, the police report copies, and Evelyn's original passbook down right in front of him. Arthur's eyes fell onto the bank logo at the top of the paper. As he scanned the highlighted transaction numbers and saw his forged signature printed in dark ink, his smug smile vanished instantly. His skin turned ash gray, and the wine glass in his trembling hand shattered onto the hardwood floor. Detective Miller stepped forward, his heavy boots echoing across the dining room floor as he pulled out a pair of steel handcuffs. The comfortable, expensive illusion my parents had built over decades crumbled in a matter of seconds. Arthur panicked, dropping to his knees and desperately trying to shift the blame. "It wasn't just me," he stammered, pointing a trembling finger toward my mother. "She knew about the accounts. She helped me set up the offshore transfers to cover the business debts." My mother's face went completely pale as the detective turned his gaze to her. The bank trail didn't just expose Arthur's primary thefts. It revealed that my mother had been actively managing secondary side accounts, hiding hundreds of thousands of stolen dollars under fake business names while playing the innocent housewife. She had been a willing partner in erasing my grandmother's legacy. "Arthur and Eleanor," Detective Miller announced, his voice stern and unyielding. "You both have the right to remain silent." As the officers pulled Arthur to his feet and snapped the cuffs around his wrists, he turned to me, his eyes wide with frantic desperation. "Blake, please. We're your parents. You can't let them do this to our family. You destroyed this family years ago," I replied quietly, meeting his gaze without flinching. The neighbors stood on their front porches, whispering and watching in shock as my parents were led out to the police cruisers in broad daylight. Arthur was officially charged with grand larceny, elder financial abuse, and multiple counts of felony forgery, facing a minimum of 15 years in prison. The dark secret he tried so hard to bury with Grandma Evelyn had finally caught up to him. In the months that followed, the legal system moved swiftly and decisively. The court issued an immediate freeze on all of Arthur and Eleanor's personal bank accounts and investment portfolios. To make full restitution for the $350,000 stolen from Grandma Evelyn, the judge forced the liquidation of my parents' luxury properties, including their suburban home and vehicles. Every cent was recovered and deposited directly into the newly restored trust fund that Evelyn had originally created for me. With my parents sentenced to serve time in state prison, the heavy dark cloud that had hovered over my life for decades finally lifted. The financial restitution gave me independence, but the real healing came from knowing I had honored my grandmother's memory. I used a portion of the inheritance to establish the Evelyn Vance Senior Advocacy Center, a local nonprofit organization dedicated to providing free legal aid and financial monitoring for elderly citizens facing family exploitation. Every time I walk into the center and see elderly folks getting the protection they deserve, I feel Grandma Evelyn's presence. Arthur thought he could bury her voice under 6 feet of dirt, but her legacy ended up saving not just me, but hundreds of vulnerable seniors in our community. Sitting in my home in Carmel, looking out over the ocean, I am no longer the scared child kept in the dark. I am strong, completely free, and living the exact life my grandmother fought so hard to give me. Standing up to my parents and uncovering the truth wasn't easy, but honoring my grandmother's love gave me the courage to fight for what was right. Sometimes, protecting the memory of the people who truly cared for us means standing firm against toxic family dynamics, no matter how intimidating it feels. I proved that truth will always find its way to the light, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. Now, I want to ask you, if you were placed in my position and discovered that your parents had committed a serious financial crime against your favorite family member, would you report them to the authorities, or would you keep the secret to protect the family name? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below, because I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. On the screen right now, you'll see 2 of our channel's top favorite stories that are packed with unexpected twists you definitely won't want to miss. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.